To whom it may concern, from Peter Bell. Date May 2nd, 2020. Regarding MITACS project at the wing dam for Omanika mining. Long story short, academic industrial funding from the government of Canada, 1-to-1 hiring students. There's shred credits too for companies that are able to demonstrate some novel scientific techniques involved in their activities. Shred credit, SR and ED, tax credit, something like that. On a new profit that Omanika has, it's possible to have tax credits. You know, it's advantageous to look for things to spend money on that have multipliers. One of them is these research credits. Another is research projects with universities. In-kind contributions are valued well in those programs. The cash component is good if you want to hire students and you have some idea of what that entails. It's a pretty unique thing to manage. Most companies can't do it, don't do it. So there's an opportunity for players who can figure it out. One of them, I know, Geomega Resources, done a good job of that. Medallion Resources has done as well. They're both rare earth companies. Most gold companies don't do anything with university research projects. Most gold companies lose money. You know, the ones that I know, none of them, the other gold companies that I'm looking at, they're investing in turn to profit on a carried basis with all kinds of margin. Like the positive basis on Omanika is potentially very surprising, right? Like a lot of cash flow coming in to the company anyways, so it means lots of spending happening potentially. It's possible for Omanika to start by just building up a treasure chest, then they can settle their accounts payables, and then they can just continue to build up cash. Sorry, some people say cash is trash, but I disagree. One of the good things to use cash for is spending on research and development, if you can. So I don't know exactly what that entails at the wing dam for Omanika, but one possible topic would be, audio AMT, audio magnetotelluric passive geophysical survey that tests for deep structures in the lithosphere and the asthenosphere or surface conditions of rocks. It's good for viewing like kilometers down, and there's a good reason to do that on an academic basis at wing dam. So, sometimes the scales of these surveys have to be pretty large. The question, for example, is does Barkerville Mountain have a AMT response at depth below it? I don't know. A research project with BCIT or UBC or any other number of Canadian educational places could do the science to do some of that imaging for multiple companies too on a donation basis. So that's one of the things too, like it opens it up to MITACS to open it up to special purpose vehicles as funding partners, right? So I could start up the warrants that I talked about putting 10 grand into Omanika. The cost of one MITACS internship is $7,500, and there's possibility of taking within Omanika. You could simply take the $10,000 that I'm putting in and fund an internship with cash left over, that would be very small, and there's a need for big involvement. It's unclear exactly how OMM would participate in a MITACS internship, but the answer to that question is basically very simply, right? Again, in-kind contributions matter a great deal. So if you can provide the project management services somehow on an in-kind basis for shares, for example, pay the project manager in shares, and then cash contributions matched by the Canadian government in a setting where you hire, graduate students to do technical work for you. And possible, again, example of a project you could do would be AMT modeling at Wingdam. It's a passive geophysical technique that can image kilometers of geology to like great detail and show deep plumbing systems and things. So what is going on at Wingdam? I have no idea, and mining it is a great way to find out. See what grade you get, is one way to figure it out with placer deposits. Anyways, you can count the pennies and everything, but as I mentioned before, special purpose vehicles, and it's possible for me to start a private company and simply pay for a MITACS internship, with myself contributing in kind project supervision services for shares in the private company. Presumably, this company can pay for some research that's valuable to OMM, on a carried basis in exchange for some further participation and the profits of the venture. Quite simply, you look at what OMM has been able to do with a private mining contractor, HCC Mining of Saskatchewan. Legendary. Very, very good deal. Probably one of the best deals in Canada. Saskatchewan underground mining crew doing ground freezing at a paleoplacer gold show in the Caribou, British Columbia, Canada. What a great gamble that is for an exploration basis, right? And if you can do a multiplier on your spending with these university grants, and you can study esoteric topics that transcend even your property boundaries, right? Like, OMM is never going to get an AMT survey result analysis of Barkerville for Osisco. Would they? Highly unlikely. But a university project with Geoscience BC that tries to survey the whole area, funded on a private basis, for an initial $7,500 cash. Yes, please. It's quite epic. And the main requirement too of this MITACS thing is that you spend time, student spends time at the company project. So they'll need to hire somebody who, there's the technical challenge of doing the AMT data analysis, but that's quite a sophisticated task. And actually contact a friend from Australia who says he has a friend himself that is an expert at AMT, data analysis. So seek professional help with that, because that's like one of the hardest things to do. But the field work, requires very sensitive machinery, but it's like something students can do, I believe. If you rent the machinery or equipment, or you build it, I don't know. It's apparently the measurements with these AMT systems, it's like talking about 15 minutes of data at night being and 15 minutes as being your target signal length. They can record the surface, so they can put some sensor in the rocks and leave it there for 15 minutes, and you get your data. And if you do it in the middle of the night, you get a much lower noise level, I think. So, you can do it once. I don't know how much, it depends on your equipment, how good of a signal you get, right? But that's what makes it somewhat academic. And, again, maybe there's money to hire this person to advise, maybe there's other ways. Like, I don't know if it's budget feasible to do an AMT survey at the Wing Dam for 15 grand with the university project. Like, maybe if you find a university that has AMT equipment just sitting around, then the 15 grand can be to a student to analyze the data or something simple. Maybe, but it's probably not a realistic project. It's probably, a proper AMT cert is probably 50 grand, if not, 250 grand. Like, I don't know what the cost of MT is, but I know the cost of like IP, can be thousands and thousands, and any field work, any geological exploration sampling work's always going to be like heavy duty. But the point is, there's a broader category beyond AMT, which is geophysics that are using passive source geological information. I think that's a technical term that's accurate, right? Like IP, magnetics, IP is a big one. Magnetics even. IP, as I just said, can cost thousands and thousands of dollars to run electric lines with the clearing required and all the mobilization. So yep, it's a lot of mobilization cost, but you can get a lot of signal out of it, if there's metal in the ground. And if you can do the geochemistry, figure out what kind of metal it is, right? You get information that's like valuable for exploration work. So that's called like a applied source or like active source geophysical survey, because you're putting the energy into the system that produces a signal, right? And that's different from a situation where you just put a sensor on the ground for 15 minutes at night, like 3 a.m, and take, in either case you get data. And it's a question, can you analyze it? What do you do with it? Do you have any idea what you're doing? Can you do it safely? How far can you get in terms of doing something useful in a geophysical survey at the Wing Dam? And the answer remains to be seen. Some people will probably say, oh, it doesn't matter. I would say maybe it does. Let's figure it out. Potential to get a lot of bang for your buck off a university matching funding program is distinct advantage because the project's in Canada as well. Keep in mind, the fact that we're in Canada is like a big part of the reason, like, that you can do these MITACS programs. And again, a private company can just start itself up and pay for MITACS, right? That's like the best lottery research university grant system you can imagine. So, like, Omanika's money can be paying for it, or Peter Bell's money can be paying for one of these MITACS grants. They're so discrete and singular, and potentially provide a lot of realistic, like, accurate, helpful, valuable information. Not a guarantee, but it's worth a shot, and it's a good overlay to have, right? Like, if you already have production going on under a contract miner basis, if you can have research projects going on under a contract basis where there's a shellco or just a special, I use a special purpose vehicle language before. I don't know if that's too much ornate. Like, reality remains. Step up to initial MITACS, see what happens out of that. Add that onto whatever the contract miner is doing underground and whatever the drilling contractor is doing at surface. It's like 3-pronged program plus at Wingdam 2020. Think about that. It'd be a big win in terms of doing new work at an important gold deposit in Canada. So bullish. Highly worthwhile thing to do, potentially very cheap. And again, if you do it privately, so there's a Privco that's actually doing the MITACS, then you can pay me in shares of that for supervising the project itself, right? Omanika may or may not want to fund one, but Peter Bell probably should. So if I can get, access, permission to do geological exploration work, right, with UBC at site, then it's worthwhile for me to put in the legwork to manage and instigate that project, right? And even try and do several of them. Maybe start with one that I pay for, some private company. Maybe do other projects too, paleoplacer mining methods as an engineering topic. How big is that? Think about all the stuff you could do. Out of control. Silly amount of things that you could do. And usually these research projects are kind of academic and they don't really matter because the company's so cash constrained it can barely operate, right? Like junior mining finance is like pretty desperate for most juniors. There's a lot of people like running low on fuel. And creates a lot of opportunity, right? People have cash, step in, like make something happen. So doesn't matter to the market. Does anybody care? Publish engineering plans for a new mining method? Is that superfluous? Could you, the exchange allow you to do that? Is that useful at all to anyone? Probably. Probably. And normally that kind of spending doesn't make any sense because junior has no money. Just spending. Usually very expensive programs, singular items. $500,000 program for a pubco. Should be smaller than that for a year. If you're a public company, if you're not investing more than that, you're providing no action in your stock because there's nothing going on in your company, your work programs. You're just shell sitting there doing nothing. That's a usual condition for most junior mining stocks. Now, consider the fact that Omanika is in a different position, potentially. Standing to receive some amount of money on an ongoing basis, carried by private mining contractor out of Saskatchewan. Probably one of the best long-standing mining groups in Canada. I think they've heard the phrase 125 years for these guys. I don't know what that means, but I like the sound of it. Really glad to have them working underground. They deserve half the gold and then to be paid some fixed amount for half of all the rest of it. They take like 60% on an NSR basis, 65 plus. But the converse of that is that Omanika has a 30% NSR equivalent rate of return on a new high grade gold mine, source of revenue in BC, Canada. So Omanika has a new revenue stream coming online. As we say, it's some amount, and it's supposed to pay pretty well. That's good because Omanika needs a lot of money. It's a public company that's got a big hole in the ground with with Mark Twain looking at it. So the fact that there's this money coming in to Omanika changes how you have to look at this university research spending, because the spending is a lot more valuable when you have the cash flow, because it gives a multiplier on your spending. And it's intellectual capital, it's new technology ideas, or even just geophysical work that's done from an academic perspective. Is that valuable to markets? If it gives you a tax credit against your carried interest production, then from a financial perspective, as a Omanika Mining Metals CFO looking at buying tax credits with matched university funding for esoteric studies of the project that potentially unlock a greater understanding of the signature and the potential for repetition across the region and across Omanika Mining land package, of course. A lot of money coming into the company, a lot of spending on drilling, a lot of payables, but these, look at what British Columbia will do for drilling spending as well. If not Canada, Quebec already gets it. Is it a matter of time before drilling exploration in BC gets a 1-to-1 match for all programs? Why has nobody said that before? 2020, May 2nd, it's Peter Bell. So I'll point out again, our set of considerations has changed for Omanika from your standard junior mining company, because Omanika will be in this cash flow positive position, which is very unusual. And up until then, it's just hypothecating, unknown, possible version of the future. But, maybe the best version. These academic programs getting matched by government spending, and if we could, if there's to be government spending matched, or other technology work, that the BC government decides to fund on a match basis, Omanika, with its revenue and profits, stands to be in a strong position to put money on the table for things like that. And if it reduces the tax credit, right? Like, how much of the gold is British Columbia government gonna take from the wing depth? Are they taking 1%, 10%, 100%, 150%? Like, what's the federal government taking? If you add up all the layers of government that want some piece of this gold, like, how much tax are you paying? Is there municipal, who knows? Probably quite a lot of money. Probably over 25%, I would think. Probably over 25%. No idea. But it's a big cost. Being profitable entails carrying a lot of burden for society, I guess, in Canada, which is probably a good thing. But in the same way, the government should put up money to help this type of business activity too, because it does create so much wealth Like, think of literally digging up money. British Columbia government decides we're gonna do a gold bond, right? We have all this gold production, and we know of all these reserves, and the provincial government's gonna buy up some of these old mines that are on the verge of production, but are so mismanaged or so undercapitalized that they have no basis being in operation, and just empty shells of suits and people taking salaries that overpaid or something. Net negative management value add. So it would seem, but in sometimes survival is just everything in the mining industry, right? So pretty much Omanika story is very unusual because you're dealing with this situation where you have profitability at stake. I said it before, I'll say it again. Simple fact, the dividend is possible. Somewhat surprising. I remember one of my papers, I calculated $10 million net income in the first year. And that's on 100 million shares. It's 10 cents a share. So this was at a time when the stock is trading at 12 cents a share, or 13 or 14. So that's first year. And then you have Tom McNeil and Toronto standing up and saying, we don't know how long this could go. I don't know if he said a number for a number of years, but it would have, I recall being very surprised. It's in the transcript somewhere. Dig it up, have a look. I'm speechless, but it's quite simple. It's been a home run investment. They've just been waiting to pull a trigger over 8 years, almost. I think 8 years approximately. How long Tom McNeil said they've been waiting. They put it on ice when the gold market turned last time, 2011, last real mania. And they didn't put it in production because they were late for the cycle or something. Long history to the company, but project history is even longer. Read about the Wingdam underground, historical mining activity there, 150 years almost in record. So pretty impressive. Don't have a number on how much gold total. Probably, I feel like it might be 50,000 ounces or 100,000 ounces. There have not been, millions of ounces taken out of here historically by hand. Really? Some places in the world there have, right? I believe the number here would be much lower, like 250,000 ounces, maybe, in all production, including underground. Maybe 500,000 total production, surface and underground, from 1850 to 2000. There's probably been another 500,000 from 2000 to 2020, or by 2025 we'll have another 500,000, because the production's really growing, I think, underground, or has the potential to. You look at 2.4 million ounces reserves on those Cisco's books for it. How long did it take them to mine that? I don't know. What's it worth on a capitalization basis? I don't know. Is it a permanent mine? I think so. Temporary closure? Yeah, probably. Possible to start it up again with fairly short order? You bet. You bet. Totally possible. So give that a shot and, you know, do it from the blessed position of having cash. A really unheard of position for a junior to make $10 million net income in a year on a carried basis out of nowhere. I think the market cap was 4 million when I first dug them up. Like, what? How does that happen? I hope the number's smaller than that, because that seems like an unruly number. I hope it's like 2 million or something in the first year net income. You know, will COVID shut them down? Will it be a problem? I don't know, but to be in the hands of ACC Mining is a privileged position again, worth a lot just to have them as operators. Really, the public company should pay for the right, which it's basically doing. So, do that. Up until we get the numbers, speculation, and company not going to be providing any guidance. I asked Tom about that, and he said no, not 43-101, they can't. So we're left to look around and try and do some napkin math on this very sparse number of holes. Really, I don't know if there's a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen. I think there's certainly under 100 drill holes at the wing dam. And I don't know what the total gold production was there historically. Somebody did ask about the variability, and I posted some statistics from a report that showed fairly consistent grades and very variable grades, but like consistent total gold, I think, which is like a classic feature of old-time mining. Really, maybe. You know, the potential for bonanza stuff to keep them going in the lean times, and then to just mine a whole bunch afterwards. So it's unclear to me, you know, what to expect from this gold deposit. But, you know, will it prove profitable this time? I think so. And, you know, will it prove profitable enough that HCC continues to do it indefinitely? Lord, I hope so. You know, and I hope more junior mining companies do contract mining projects on a carried basis with partners, right? And if a company's in a carried basis on, you know, production from a placer claim, it's a great idea. Should find ways to get carried on other things too. If you can find a way to get carried on research projects, do that. BC Canadian federal government funding, MITACS, my earlier note rambling on about. But you can do more than that too. And, you know, the hard rock exploration is really the key. That's really what the, you know, upside valuation, the potential to find $1 billion worth of gold there in 18 months of drilling. Or 18 weeks. Like, I don't know, what's the number, right? Like, if you get into something and it's just ultra high grade, you can define a large amount of gold quickly. It doesn't take a lot of drilling, right? I'm not talking about placer, alluvial gold. I'm talking about hard rock. Load gold, source material. Find it around maybe some vertical ore chutes. You can do vertical, you know, at wing dam, for example. You know, if there was like a rich vertical seam of gold, you know, rich seam of gold, vertically oriented at wing dam, that would be a great thing to drill off. Imagine like Red Lake gold in BC, in the Caribou, below the wing dam, right? Not particularly surprising to find something like that. It's just a matter of drilling. Broader question, how much production Dominica expect to receive, interest in. The answer for most junior mining companies is zero. If they're lucky, they'll sell an asset someday. Most of them don't. Most of them just lose money and service tax loss carry forwards that are not particularly valuable to anyone at the present or in the past. There's a certain class of promoter out there that uses these shell companies to wash, rinse, and repeat treatment of investors in the junior mining markets. Simply, whatever the numbers are, eventually, it remains to be seen. It's such a brilliant idea for a business venture, and it's superb execution. Idea is repeatable and scalable, and pretty clearly profitable as well for the public company, Dominica Mining Metals. And profitability brings its own issues, right? So I'm talking about, what do you do with your income? What can you do to benefit from the system? Projects with a carried interest, highly favorable. Other things like that, also very smart. Wonderful things to do. And the classic exploration work, also humongous. Potential to, how many gram meter hits would Dominica get this year, right? We're standing here May 2nd, Saturday night, 11:30 p.m. Looking forward at the month of May, wondering what's possible. We have no guidance basically on timelines or production rates. There's this phase 1 they've talked about that I calculated as 10 million plus profit, Dominica. Don't know how long that'll take. Maybe 2 years. Maybe more, maybe less. I have no idea. Probably much less. Probably a year or less than a year. But it remains to be seen, right? Will COVID restrictions slow them down? Will they be able to meet these wild estimates that I seem to have? Very high expectations. Ask John Kaiser about what happens with those things, right? Thing to consider is at this point to have valuation on your side. If it is $10 million in income, it's 10 cents a share. The 100 million shares out. Current share count is around 100 million. It was less, I think. Well, maybe more now with this financing that they've just done. Recently, below, it's probably gone above 100,000 for the first time. 100 million share count for Dominica. All that, dilution is great. What's the contributed deficit to Dominica at this point, right? If you check the entire, the company's been a few things, right? I think it was Copper Canyon, I believe, for a time, which was a spin out of Eagle Plains, right? What? If you think about that, you start to understand, better the history of the shareholder base of Dominica, and how smart they are, and how much they understand. Exploration is key, but also getting paid is key. Their TerraLogic company, for example, is very effective project, management company, geological exploration work. So the classic combination for Eagle Plains is, hey, we have projects and we have crew. If you have checks to write for gold exploration or base metal exploration, come talk to us. We got something for you, and then also doing the Pubco seed shell game. Just creating new companies out of, successful initiatives, right? For example, the wing dam, they understood early that project was good enough to float on its own. You know, it might be a while before the placer project can pay because markets are crazy, but they knew that at some point in time, it's highly likely gold price would rise high enough that going back to wing dam would be suitable business on its own. And if you can get placer production out of it at the same time, then you're doubly good, which is why Dominica has placer claims and not just mineral claims, right? That's why they did a bulk sampling program in the past. It was, you know, produced some gold. So they're going to do it again on a contract basis. How much gold would they produce this time? I don't know. I think it's mostly a function of, you know, how much gold is there, and then how much work HCC mining can do to get it out. And I don't know the answers to either of those questions. So, future Dominica is very uncertain. It might be highly disappointing relative to my $10 million estimates, right? You know, you think about the deficit and the convertible bond that Dominica has on his balance sheet. Oh, give me a break. Hilarious. It's a financial, you know, engineering example, right? Why a pubco has a payable, a convertible. It's great business. It really is. And the reason for it is that the Eagle Plains crew, the TerraLogic crew, I believe, were the ones who did the initial underground bulk sampling work at Wing Dam to prove it was possible. I think Chuck Downey's in the pictures, you know, from Eagle Plains. I don't know. I don't know who did the underground mining back in 2012. But Saskatchewan represent, you know, HCC Mining from Saskatchewan, ready to take a stab at the work. It's totally a reasonable thing for them to do. So, again, as I started this recording, it all ties into me, how I've floated the idea of starting a private company to do non-mechanized mining at surface, at the wing dam, on a carried basis. Turns out the area I settled on as priority is right above the 2012 underground operations. So, you know, it's potentially unsafe, you know, potentially fine. The entire area is unsafe, potentially. But doing surface work directly above the ongoing underground workings on an ongoing basis, that's a question. We don't know if that's safe or not. There's some mention in the documents describing 2012 work that talks about, you know, the surface collapse at the active creek, you know, because you're taking out material from the creek bed, and something about that causing slumpage of surface. So, you know, in fact, what you would want to do is you'd want to go sample the slumped areas, right? At surface, do something to help them settle. Maybe go, you know, isolate them from water or something, potentially. But quite a lot of potential activities you can do. You can study those. You can study those as academic topics, or you know, it's a practical thing too, right? How much gold did you get from doing surface sampling of the areas that slump after you work them underground? What kind of grade distribution would you expect from that cross section of surface rock at Wing Dam? Was zero gold? I mean, colors? Who knows? Do that on a private carried basis where the private company partner does academic project management on behalf of the Dominica Mining and Metals Company, where the private company assigns the shred tax credits in some way to Omanika mining. That's one possibility. You want to pay attention to those credits. They typically come along with MITACS. They may be inconsequential or they may be not. I don't know. But in addition to that, I didn't even mention the NSERC stuff, but Omanika mining itself, with its larger budgets and larger, financial position, it can do stuff like larger, like $250,000 like NSERC grants with like interdisciplinary groups through NSERC and MITACS together. And those come along with like larger credits, tax credits again, I believe. And those can include in-kind contributions, right? So taking advantage of existing operations to, allow student field crew to come in and do some special work with some consultants supervising them maybe. Like whatever your budget is for that, giving that a shot. To talk of that as like a $500,000 annual spending program. $250,000. What? That's too much money to spend, right? That would be like what? You're going to multiply that twice and maybe more? To what end? Well, to what cost, right? If you're doing it out of your passive income from the underground placer, then it adds to whatever exploration work you're doing in drilling and surface and geophysics, with professional like geological consultant groups as well. It's the primary spending plan for Omanika if they ever receive $10 million of income from their paleoplacer. How much of that will they spend on settling their debts, and how much will they be able to spend on underground or hard load gold source exploration, drilling work? What's the debt at this point? Probably $8 million of the convertible, and then how much else is there? Maybe $2 million in payable. It's a $10 million hole just to start with. So my calculations may result in basically zero, penny per share profit in the first year. Even an optimistic scenario, or maybe different. I don't know if those are, if I'm in the ballpark at all, right? Because there's no economic report for this thing. So I'm really out there with my thumb in the wind, asking HCC if they know what's coming. And the reality is nobody quite knows because it's a placer gold deposit. So again, because it's so special, it's a good thing to study academically. And if you have a carried interest position when you have all this cash, you're looking at how do I get my tax rate down on this cash from a corporate perspective. And that's everything that I'm talking about here, really. Risk capital and risk spending that provides like an economic interpretation, that's like a layer of information analysis for the company, the matrix of its exploration activities, and it also potentially provides a tax benefit, and most companies again wouldn't be interested in doing this, but because we're in a carried position with cash to spend, we do. Look at it. So, quite long, winding explanation of a pretty basic idea, which may be possible in 8 months. Might be 8 months, might be 12 months, might be 18 months, before this is really a relevant part of the market conversation for the stock. Maybe 18 months away. 1 year to settle the hole, 6 months to start building out cash. and then start talking about working down your tax bill by doing matched spending programs for the governments. Potential for HCC to get Saskatchewan government money, for intra-Canadian work, and for, Omanika as a BC domiciled public company to get a match on spending for drilling, then you're doubly good. Does that BC government spending for drilling exist yet? I don't think so. How big is it? It's not big enough, but the potential implications of doing really exceptional work at the wing dam is to put a spotlight on the Caribou Gold District for the entire world, right? Find the best new gold deposit in 2020 in Canada. Maybe can you try to be in North America? Can you try to be in the world? Like, what does the best gold discovery 2020 look like? I have no idea. No idea. But, again, it's a good position to be in where potentially cash flow positive to the point of spending for drilling just fine on your own without any need for government support. But government's going to take some tax, so you got to prepare for that. Another silly thing to consider is what would be your topic for your research project. And I said it before, I'll say it again, audio magneto to lyrics. Doing like a series of those programs around the entire 300 square kilometers of Omanika Wingman project. 300 square kilometers? You could actually do AMT over, is that cost efficient? Is that affordable? Can you do that? No idea. Probably not. You might be able to do some small campaign around, known gold. Maybe you can do more. I don't know. You have to find out what the topic could be. But again, you can start by doing one project. Simply special purpose vehicle, dedicated company, does nothing else other than that. Pay me and do the project management for all that shares in that private company. And then if that goes well, you do another one. And you build up this company that generates this intellectual property that Omanika then buys and shares potentially someday if it generates enough value for Omanika, right? Another question is, would Omanika ever buy HCC mining? Probably not. HCC mining is probably not for sale, really, like that. But, if Omanika mining of metals makes enough to be able to buy HCC, think of how much HCC is made. They get the majority position. They incur all the costs. Is it a fair breakdown? Generates cash for the public company. Sure, it's fair. Let's see how much it generates, and if the terms are sustainable, can we keep them, or do we have to revisit conversations? HCC has a 50% controlling interest in the placer claims now, so who knows, maybe we're just in the passenger seat at this point. That's okay. I hope HCC has access to the capital and the technical know-how to do the work. It's really valuable work. And again, this is a model that changes everything for junior mining companies because it gives them income that they have to worry about. Changes what's appropriate spending for them to some degree. And it's a model that should be repeated. And it's a model that can be repeated quite a lot. Any private company that can do contract mining on a placer claim, who knows? do you have people who are looking to bet on gold and gamble on gold production? Like, what's a minimum bet size for a program of placer mining? You know, like Mount Pinkerton, talked about that before again and again. Can you go there and do placer mining, non-mechanized methods, on ground controlled, or ground where the mineral claims are owned by Osisko Gold Mining Company? Backside of the hill, you know, Osisko owns some of the placer claims, but not all. And it's along the old wagon road, and the potential to ride dirt bikes out there and do kind of like field work, placer mining, non-mechanized, with small crews, 5 people. It's a great way for somebody to put down money, potentially produces a return in gold, right? So it's a special purpose vehicle. A private company is set up by some gamblers to put up money to pay for a contract miner on some placer claim, blah, blah, blah. It's high risk to do it generally. The advantage that Omanika has, and the reason it all works, is because the Lightning Creek Wing Dam is known to be so rich. So talking about doing this at other places is a very different proposition. They don't have the same historical production. But in instances where there are historically viable mines, revisiting them on a carry basis for public companies, it's a great idea. For financiers who can invest in the public company as a shell and then invest privately in underground placer claims, you know, and then the company to invest in staking placer claims in British Columbia, which is very cheap, or by optioning placer claims that are owned by people. For example, there's people who are wanting to sell claims for $500,000. Great. Will they take half shares, half cash, or will they take all shares? Right? If you can find as a shell, it's worthwhile to buy an interest in an existing placer project. In the case of Omanika, it was worthwhile for the contract miner to buy an interest in the placer project, which is the other way around, because the placer project that Omanika has is so good, and HCC Mining is so smart that they knew they could hit it out of the park on a deal. So let's make a deal business, and these guys are all smart enough to get together and make a deal. It's a long time coming. It's not done yet. I don't even know if they've started it really yet. You know, it's not, I think the ground's still frozen. They're still waiting on thaw. So looking forward today is talking about university research funding grants. You know, as a hedging income tax. You know, it's a pretty absent-minded kind of discussion at this point to have, because again, there's all these payables, this hole to fill, and then all the spending to do, catch up. It's really just, you know, an aggressive stock market play. Benefit a few people potentially. And I'll mention again the broader point about the BC government, you know, looking at this. I've heard people talk about how the government should have a mining company investment arm or something like that, and just provide risk capital on a, you know, discounted basis for geochem, field work, and drilling, and, you know, geophysics, right? Geoscience BC programs, right? Like, those things are so valuable, and the government should just spend hundreds of millions of dollars on stuff like that every year if it can. And you say, how does it afford it? And the answer is, well, gold production or copper production or any number of other things, right? If you're actively investing in this mining industry in British Columbia, then it's going to be producing more tax income for you, potentially on a net positive basis. So let's get into an hour-long audio note. Rather long, a lot of stuff all jammed in there, but hope the repetitions clarify kind of what's important. Thank you. Goodbye.